Now we have our special guest, Daniel Kalinsky. He's our regional director for the Central New York region. I had the pleasure of riding up the elevator with Daniel this morning, and he's our spotlight presentation on all the cool things that are happening up in Central New York. So, Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board of Directors and Commissioner Knight. When my team got together to talk about what we wanted to present today, there were really two things that we hope that you take away from this presentation. The first, obviously, being that you could understand all the cool things that are happening in Central New York. There's been a lot going on over the last 10 years. But second, I think more importantly, is how important the work that this agency does. And you'll see it through some of the slides that I'm going to present, but when we provide regions an opportunity to come up with strategic visions and then provide those regions the resources to implement those visions, that you can quite literally change the trajectory of a region. And I hope through my presentation you'll see that that's exactly what's happened in Central New York. I'm sure by now many of you have heard of a small project, $100 billion project called Micron. This presentation, and that's good, I'm glad that you all know it, because this presentation is not about Micron. And to take a page out of Kevin Eunice's book, I'm hoping to not use the M word for the rest of this presentation. But I put this slide up there because I do believe it presents important context for what I'm about to present after this, and that something like this does not happen by accident. You don't simply bring in one of the world's largest semiconductor manufacturers just on a whim. And really, it was decisions that were made 15 and 10 years ago that laid the foundation for this momentous project to happen in Central New York. So real quick, who, what, where is Central New York? Quite literally and aptly named, we are in the center of the state. We are a 5-county region with 6 cities, and Syracuse being right at the heart and the largest of the metropolitan areas within it. Population just over 780,000. And what's interesting about that stat is our region actually grew by 1% from 2017 to 2020, and Onondaga County actually grew by 3.6%. And this is all before the project with an M was announced. We're anticipating an additional 100,000 plus over the next 10, 20 years to come into the region. And so there's a lot of work being laid to get ready for that influx of population. Some of our key industry clusters, some of those like agriculture and manufacturing have been cornerstones of our economy for the last 2 centuries. And then others like smart systems and uncrewed aerial systems are relatively new and are actually the result of intentional investments that we've made into the region to try to grow those economies in upstate New York. Just some interesting facts. So when you're, up at trivia night one night at Coleman's, you're able to answer the questions accurately. I won't read through all these, but KU County has the most freshwater coastline of any county in New York State. Tipperary Hill, where my family is from, has a green on top, red on bottom street light. I'm told it is the only one in the world, so if you're up in Central New York, it's worth checking out. Very interesting story about the stone throwers, knocking out the red light. And the last one I want to highlight is 1948 Bristol Laboratories developing the first synthetic penicillin. And this is important because that laboratory, and I'll get into more detail later, actually synthesized 70% of the world's penicillin up until the early 2000s. And if you'll indulge me a minute, because I think it's important to kind of go back to where we were and to demonstrate kind of how we got to where we are today. I want to talk about the history of progress and innovation that we saw throughout Central New York. So through much of its history, CNY was kind of at the forefront of some of the most major movements throughout the country. Home to abolitionists and the Underground Railroad. Many stops along the Underground Railroad exist within Central New York, and Harriet Tubman, arguably one of the most famous conductors of the Underground Railroad, actually called Auburn home after she retired from her conducting of moving slaves along the Underground Railroad into Canada for freedom. A history of advocating for women's rights and families' rights. Obviously, Seneca Falls is right down the road. We know the important role that played in passing the right for women to vote, but also the Hotel Oneida in Madison County, at the time really kind of a beacon of what we were able to build, was really ahead of its time. Had a woman manager back in the 1920s and was a frequent stop for the League of Women Voters as they were having their meetings in Madison County. And being welcoming to refugees and immigrants. Interesting fact about Fort Ontario up in Oswego County, it was the only emergency refugee settlement set up during World War II for victims of the Holocaust. And we continue a proud tradition of accepting immigrants and refugees into the Syracuse area and the greater Central New York region. And really it's created in this tapestry of rich culture and really is a part of the fabric that makes up Central New York today. Beyond just kind of being at the forefront of a lot of the biggest moments throughout history, we also were arguably the kind of Silicon Valley of the 20th century, before we kind of had a Silicon Valley. Some of the most innovative and largest corporations in the world called Syracuse home. 3 right here that I think everybody would recognize: Carrier Corporation, General Electric, and Bristol-Myers Squibb. Carrier obviously manufacturing air conditioning units, and the largest one in the world was located right in Syracuse. General Electric, with its E-Lab, at one point had 17,000 people on its campus. And some of the things that we use today, research in semiconductors and computers and radars and sonars, all spun out of the E-Lab, which was right here in Electrics Park in just outside of Syracuse. And then Bristol-Myers Squibb, as I mentioned earlier, 70% of the world's penicillin was developed in this facility up until the mid-2000s. What's interesting about this site is Bristol-Myers Squibb actually doesn't exist there anymore. It was purchased by Lotte, which will continue to produce the penicillin, but will also be doing advanced research in biologics on the site. So that campus is going to get a complete revamp. And again, it's just a testament to not only the history of the work that was done there, but also the foundation that we've laid with the investments made over the last 10 to 20 years.
Dan, does Carrier still exist up in, do they still have a presence up there?
They do. So it's mostly their R&D, and there's about 1,200 employees that exist up there. But at one point there was 7,000, and so you can see how them leaving, and you get right into kind of my next slide. Like many of the industrialized cities in the Northeast and the Midwest, globalization, and quite ironically, the cooling of the South, which allowed it to be industrialized via air conditioning, led to many of those jobs leaving upstate New York, whether they were going overseas or if they were moving to the South. And so headlines like these were all too common during the 90s and 2000s. Layoffs strike the heart of Syracuse, forgetting its proud economic history. Syracuse loses its future. There was really this feeling of pessimism and decline that existed throughout most of my childhood, and many who lived through it as they were losing their jobs and having to move families. We saw huge population declines. And I think all of this, again, is important context because we were kind of a region without a vision. We didn't really know what our future was going to be. We didn't have an economy that we could capitalize on. And that leads me to, again, why our work is so important. So what you see here, the CNY Rising Plan, this is what came out of the 2014 Upstate Revitalization Initiative competition, where the upstate regions were able to compete for $500 million. And this really was the catalyst that brought together the differing parts of our region to come up with a strategy and a vision for what we wanted the future of our region to be. Before this, a lot of people kind of existed in silos. There wasn't much collaboration. We did have the regional councils. They were still kind of in their infancy, and they were starting some of that work. But this really was the catalyst that said, let's come together, let's create a vision for what the future of Central New York can be. And as a result, the state agreed. They liked our vision, and they provided us the resources to implement that vision and to implement that strategy. And as a result, we got to work. We started making investments in uncrewed aerial systems, 50-mile corridor between Rome and Syracuse, New Air, which is kind of the leader in uncrewed aerial systems and all, helping to write the regulations for the United States right now. Genius New York, our tech competition up there. We made investments in workforce development, the National Veterans Resource Center, Erie 21 up at Lemoyne College, and the Quantum Technology Center at Syracuse University. Investments in equity and inclusion, the Alliance for Economic Inclusion, the Child Rising Center, which actually will be going up, I believe, in the next year or so, and Say Yes to Education, which allowed any kid who graduated from a city school district, Syracuse City School District, scholarship to go to college. And lastly, agriculture. Grow New York, Green Empire Farms, a large controlled environment agriculture facility in Madison County, and then the Center for Agritech Innovation in Madison County. And because of these investments, others started making investments as well. So the defense sector, Saab North America chooses DeWitt for its North American headquarters, 800 jobs, which they doubled in the last 5 years. Lockheed Martin and SRC. These two are interesting because the founders of these companies were actually employees of General Electric and spun off as competitors of General Electric, and now that legacy still exists today. Both of these companies are doing extremely well, securing federal contracts. SRC, 300 new jobs at Cicero, 300 new jobs at Lockheed Martin. Additionally, we now have a thriving startup ecosystem. The rendering you see in the back part of this slide is the Tech Garden, or what will be the Tech Garden. The construction commenced at the end of last year for the future of the Tech Garden, doubling in capacity. A $16.5 million ESD grant helped to incentivize the future of that. You can see back in 2010, $27 per capita venture capital coming into the Syracuse metro area. Today, over $1,300 per capita, and we expect that number to continue to grow as we begin to continue to spin out amazing startups. You see down here, TCG Player just sold to eBay. Density, the first billion-dollar company to spin out of the Tech Garden. We don't anticipate that it's going to be the last. And we were just named the #3 most promising tech hub in the country right now. So a lot of exciting things happening in terms of our ecosystem for startup companies.
Where is Tech Garden One an incubator?
It's yep.
And is it affiliated with Syracuse University or any of the colleges up
It's
there?
affiliated with Center State CEO.
Got it.
Yep, they manage it, and it's right in the heart of downtown, and it's an incubator and accelerator. It also houses the companies that are in our Genius New York program.
Got it, great.
And lastly, of course, tech manufacturing, kind of going back to our roots, the thing that we used to be good at so many years ago is the thing that we're still good at today. TTM Technologies just announced a $130 million expansion, 400 new jobs at its DeWitt facility. JMA Wireless, the only 5G manufacturer in the country, built a brand new state-of-the-art facility on the south side of Syracuse, $76 million investment, 240 jobs. And of course, Micron, I know I was going to say it again, but you can't get through a presentation without at least mentioning it one more time. $100 billion investment, 9,000 new jobs, and a lot of work associated with the outward effects of that investment as well. And so now headlines like these are what we see on the daily. Hancock Airport, record passenger count. Running out of space at our industrial parks. Grand opening of downtown buildings is a Syracuse revival. And most recently, and really exciting, being named one of the 31 tech hubs designations in the country. And so you might ask, what's next for Central New York? And, really, we've got a lot of work to do. We're able to, secure a lot of these investments, and we're seeing a lot of growth. There's a great line from the musical Hamilton. George Washington says, "Winning the war was easy, governing is harder." Well, we won Micron. We've got a lot of these tech companies coming here, and now our team, our staff, and with the support of the commissioner and Kevin and the rest of ESD, is ready to get to work. There's huge workforce needs that we're looking to meet to be sure that these companies can meet their needs as they're looking to grow. We have community needs in housing, community needs in social services and everything else. So we're really doing a lot of that legwork today to ensure that we don't fall behind and we're actually ahead of what's coming next. We also just recently finished a new strategic vision for our region. All the regional councils went under this process, creating a new 5-year plan. We're calling it the CNY Ascent, kind of playing off of CNY Rising as we are now no longer rising, but actually off the ground and taking liftoff with that nice little rocket ship as a way to demonstrate it. And things like equity and inclusion and collaboration kind of being at the forefront of what we're looking to do as we're implementing this plan. We're actually going to be holding a regional council meeting later in May, where we're going to be inviting the Mohawk Valley's co-chairs and my counterpart Allison to join us because the building we're going to be in actually straddles our regions, and so we're going to bring them in to talk about more cross collaboration between the regions, because the things that happen in Central New York are not unique to Central New York. While some of the ways that we fix them might be, the workforce and housing are across all regions, and so we're starting to see ourselves less as individual regions in upstate New York, and I think more as a super region. And the tech hubs really helped jumpstart that. We're also, as I mentioned, we were designated a federal tech hub. We just recently helping to support the cohort up there of the 3 cities submitted the phase 2, and we're hoping to have good news on that sometime later this year. The Community Engagement Committee, which came out of the MOU signed with Micron and the Community Investment Fund, is wrapping up some of its due diligence out in the community. We're hoping to have a community priorities document released later this year as well, and we've been helping to staff that and to really engage the community. And then we're also performing a CNY housing study right now to kind of see what are the needs of the community, as we know housing is an urgent one. And why all these things are important beyond just kind of the day-to-day ESD activities is the moment is so big that we have to make sure we get it right. And I know Kevin says this all the time, and I feel like I'm probably like, have my inner Kevin energy right now. But you know, ensuring that everybody has access to the opportunities that are going to be presented, that everybody has safe and quality housing that's affordable, that everybody can get the training that they need and childcare, and so all of these things are so important. And I'm excited. We have a great team up in Central New York. I'm sorry I don't have a great staff photo. I'll make sure the next time I present that we do have a nice staff photo for everybody. But we're looking to grow. We're going to be bringing on a project manager hopefully in the near future. We just posted that position. And I just imagine with the work coming down the pipeline that this team will have to get bigger and bigger. They really are the backbone of our office. They do incredible work on a daily basis, and I wouldn't be able to do anything without their support every day. So I'm really thankful to my team for everything that they do. And I'll just leave you with, if you need a pure visual of where we were and where we're going, this is the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, which many of you probably still or maybe call the Carrier Dome. Back in the 80s when this building was being built, Carrier provided the funds that allowed it to get off the ground. One of the first naming rights in the country at the time. It was really ahead of its time. It is now called the JMA Wireless Dome. And I think this is apt because it shows kind of where we were, the proud history with Carrier being kind of the cornerstone of a lot of what our economy was, and where we're going. JMA Wireless, 5G manufacturing, the future of tech manufacturing right here in Syracuse. And so I provide this as that visual to where we were and where we're going. And I'll just leave you with, this was a cover of that we created through our visioning process. And we anticipate this actually being on the cover of Forbes, January 30th, 2028. And so I'd say to you, if you haven't been to Central New York in a while, I'd get up now, because if you wait 5 or 10 years, it's not going to be the same place. So I thank you for your time today. Really excited about the opportunities, and I'll take any questions.
Daniel, an amazing job. First of all, I want to bottle your energy and bring it to every organization I am a part of, because that was very impressive.
Anything you need, Chairman, I'm here.
No, it was great. You didn't miss a beat, and you squeezed a lot in there. It was very informative and exciting as well. A question for you on the housing. I just read something, I think last week in the New York Times, Syracuse had the highest increases in rents in the country.
Yep.
And something tells me you have a high demand and a low supply, because that's usually what happens.
Correct.
And it is the REDC for Central New York. Are you guys making housing, some type of priority, and what's the landscape up in your 5-county region? Is there political support for more housing? I know it's a big priority of the governor's, and a lot of times she gets a lot of pushback.
Yeah. It's absolutely one of the top priorities and top of mind, both of the regional council and of the agency. As I said, we're doing the CNY housing study right now. We're hearing from each of our municipalities who all want to do their own individualized housing studies to get a sense of what they have available. So I'd say, yes, there is a lot of political support to adding new housing, and actually a lot of great initiatives that are taking place right now. The city of Syracuse is developing a housing trust where they're going to actually be able to empower that organization to purchase homes, renovate homes, put them back on the market. We've got projects like the Shopping Town Mall, former vacant shopping mall that's going to be going online and hopefully starting construction next year. That'll be 900 new units when that's all said and done. Great Northern Mall, another vacant mall. That's, I believe, 1,000+ units that's going to go online there. So there's a lot of things that are in the works right now. But it's expensive. As you're aware, especially in places like the city of Syracuse, the cost to renovate our homes to get them safe and quality is more than what the home would be worth after you're done with the renovations. So we're trying to figure out strategies for how we can offset those costs and ensure that we have livable, walkable neighborhoods.
Got it. Okay. Great to hear. Again, great job. Any other board members have any questions for Daniel?
I know that we had some conversation about the new immigrants coming to Syracuse. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have a history of both accepting immigrants and refugees, but we're also still today, I believe the average is we bring in 300 annually. We've got 3 great refugee resettlement organizations in the city of Syracuse, and we've begun working closely with them, not only to ensure that they have what they need just for basic living, but also identifying what are the skill sets they bring with them. This really is an untapped resource in terms of workforce that we're hoping to lean into, and so working with our partners of both, mapping out skills that exist and how do we get them the certificates that they need to, maybe they were a doctor or a nurse or an engineer in their home country, and how do we utilize those skills for the jobs that are open today. There's 7,000 job openings right now in Syracuse, and unemployment's at its lowest in 40 years. So there is an absolute need to find everybody, and it's an all of the above approach. But also ensuring that we continue to be a welcoming community. I think we did a focus group recently in the city school district with the community engagement committee, and we asked each of the students, what is your favorite thing about the city of Syracuse? And about a third of the responses were the diversity. And I would agree. I think it really makes up an incredible place to live, and I have a 1-year-old daughter. I'm excited that I get to raise her in such an amazing place.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Great
Dan.
energy.
Yes, love it, love it.
So,
No, I'm going to ask you if you could send around his presentation to all the board members, especially the ones who weren't here. Yeah, because it was a good job. All right. So, and I think we all agree that these special spotlight presentations have been very helpful and informative, educational. And and one other telling thing, your very last slide, Daniel, and it's the same with all of the presentations we've seen in the past. You got a lot of work to do, and you got a lot done with a pretty tiny staff. All the regional offices seem to be like under 10. So kudos to you and your team.
Thank you.